So you got yourself a violin and you're all excited to get started, looking for lessons online, trying different things from different teachers. In today's video, I'm going to cover 5 common mistakes that beginner violinists make. Hi, I'm Aryadna, and this is Mindful Strings, where I help you learn the violin on your own time and love your every practice. On this channel, I share what I wish I knew when I first started learning. And if you're interested in going deeper, please check out my free 15-minute Get Better at Violin guide down below in the description box. So I would say the number one mistake that beginners make is playing without a shoulder rest. Now, even though there are professional violinists out there who do just fine playing without the shoulder rest, it's not really a comfortable thing for most bodies. So I strongly recommend that as a beginner, you get yourself some kind of a shoulder rest to make sure that you're not altering your posture significantly when picking up the violin. In other words, you don't want to be squeezing the violin down with your head, dropping your neck forward, and you don't want to raise your shoulder up. If I show you what this looks like without the shoulder rest, you see that I am forced to raise my shoulder and squeeze the violin up, which really limits my left hand and arm mobility. If the shoulder rest is in place, it helps to balance that out, allows me to use the weight of my head as well as my arm to support the instrument and trade off as needed when I'm shifting. That way I'm able to play the instrument optimally. If you want to learn more about various shoulder rests, check out my video about the violin setup. I will link it down in the description below. The second most common mistake that I see students make all the time is not paying close attention to their left wrist and folding it up to support the violin neck like so. The violin is tricky because in some ways what's required to play it in the best way is to allow your hands to be as naturally shaped as possible. On the other hand, it's not actually easy to get there. So if you look at my hand right now, I have a straight wrist, my fingers are kind of relaxed and curved above the string, ready to go. So what you'll see a lot of the time is that because it may feel like the violin is slipping from under the chin and it's hard to get the fingers in the right spots, people will often kind of resort to this shape, which will seriously affect your intonation as well as potentially cause injury over time. If you actually do put in significant amount of time into practicing, there's a risk of developing carpal tunnel or tendinitis. What you want to do is make sure that when you first pick up the violin and learn to hold it in first position, you really pay close attention to the wrist, making sure that there's a straight line going from the knuckles over there all the way down to the elbow. The third mistake is getting stuck in the upper half of the bow simply because it's easier to play there, and then kind of never really making it down below the middle. As a beginner, you'll discover that it's a lot easier to make a decent sound starting in the middle of the bow. It's also a lot easier to get away with playing in the middle and in the upper half with a less than optimal bow hold. So you might be creating multiple bad habits while not paying close attention to what kind of sound you can produce when you get to the frog, and if you actually can play at the bottom half. Mistake number 4 is learning to play songs with both hands at the same time. What I mean by that is that in the beginning, it helps to put down the bow and use pizzicato, which is plucking the string, so that you can focus on your finger placement and your left hand shape. And then practice open strings with the bow to make sure that you can get a decent tone out of the instrument, and then add the bowing to the left hand, putting it together so that you can play the melody of whatever song you're working on more correctly and more confidently. You may have heard me say this before, playing violin is the ultimate multitasking event. So your attention will be switching frequently between the notes on the page, or if you're playing by ear, just listening to the intonation, paying attention to where your fingers are, and ideally paying attention to the shape of your hands and your posture. Breaking down the learning process in as small of steps as possible is going to get you the furthest. And finally, mistake number 5 is wanting to skip fundamentals and go straight for the advanced techniques, such as vibrato, for example. A lot of the beginners that come in and pick up a violin and are eager to learn, they want to know how to do vibrato, and before they even figure out where to put their fingers in the first position. And I will tell you right now that if you try to do things backwards, you most likely will end up wasting your time. There's a saying in Russian, the slower you go, the further you get. And I feel like it kind of applies to learning the violin in a significant way, because if you are paying close attention, practicing mindfully, and really making sure that each step of the way in terms of learning the basics of sound production and getting the notes out of the violin, you will actually be able to achieve the more advanced techniques sooner. So don't jump the gun. Figure out how to play in first position with beautiful straight tone first, focusing on sound production from the right hand, not trying to improve the sound with vibrato. And once you've got that going, then you can learn how to make vibrato with the left hand to really take your playing to the next level. Let me know if you have become a victim of your own enthusiasm and have made any of these mistakes as you pick up the violin. And also let me know if you have any questions. Happy mindful practicing, and I'll see you next time.